So, your uncle's telling you the market's cooling down, huh? Well, your uncle also told you that he saw a UFO the other day. Are you going to believe him? Well, if you do or do not believe him, welcome, my Arizona baddies. Today we're going to talk about my insight on whether if the Arizona market is cooling down or not. And if it's a bunch of BS, should you start preparing now? Should you start preparing later? Should you just go pick up your money and go freaking buy a house right now? Well, I'm planning on giving you that information today, so, come on for the ride. If not, then just enjoy my humor. I don't know. So anyways, one thing I always do to evaluate if the market's still popping or not popping is I look at the sold to list ratio. What does that mean? So what I do is I go on the MLS. And we're going to do this together right now. I first look at all the active properties that's on the market. Now, back when things were super crazy, this number was like 4,000 or 5,000. There was only 4,000 or 5,000 houses for sale. Now we're about 7,500, and it's worth being said that it is Monday. So this was probably closer to 8,000, Saturday, Friday, Sunday. So not a bad number for sure. Next thing I do is I look at the under contract and pending number. Now, this number is not too serious, but I always just like to get a good heartbeat. And it's always a higher number because, this isn't really a good indication of knowing what's selling or not selling because the house can be under contract for 2 months instead of 1 month, etc. So I just like to look at it just because, I get a good idea. And the next thing I do is I look at the last 31 days of closed data because I want to see how many houses have sold over the last 31 days. So in this case, we have 8,535. Now, I don't remember the number that the active number was, so Zeke, our editor, is going to put the number somewhere up here. So this was our active number, and this was our sold numbers. So the ratio, essentially active to sold, is about here. Now, this is essentially this number that's floating right now, which let me just find the number. 0.87. Is that what you got too, Zeke? Or hopefully I'm right, or we're going to look really dumb. So 0.87, 87%, essentially 87% of 31 days is 27 days. So essentially we have 27 days worth of inventory, meaning that if there's no more new listings that hits the market as of today, and then it continues to stay at the same rate, it'll take approximately 8 days to sell. Now, this is good news because if we get to that 1 month list to sell ratio, we're sort of back to normal. Sorry, I whacked my glasses there. We're sort of back to normal at that point because we've been like freaking 50%, like 1 or 2 weeks of a freaking list to sell ratio, and it has been brutal. So we are slowly getting back to that 1 month's worth of inventory. So does that mean that houses are selling at a good deal now? For a lot of us Arizonans, we remember 5 years ago, you could get closing costs, a kiss in the cheek, and all kinds of stuff when you're buying a house. Well, let me show you some numbers. Okay, let's just pick out a random city. Let's pick out West Valley, Gilbert, Litchfield Park, all that area. If I look at houses that have sold about with a $400,000 list price, okay, here's what the numbers that pop up. Remember, I put $400,000 as a list price. So what I like to do as well is I like to scroll down to the bottom, and I want to see how high these houses are selling. So the way I get an indication of this is I go and see how far above 400 it's gone. Now remember, list price is different than sold price. So the sold price is higher than the list price because that means it was listed under 400 and it sold at 430. Here's one that was listed at 399. It sold for 430. This one was listed at $399 and sold for $425. And this one listed at $395, sold for $425. So there's still an indication that houses are selling $20,000 to $25,000 more. Now, if I look in the $400,000 range, meaning if I have a buyer that wants to buy under $400,000, this is essentially where they would need to be at. This was listed at $379 and it sold for $400 cash. Let's get another one. Here's one in Avondale. Listed $370, sold for $400,000 cash. Another one in Avondale, sold for $378, sold for $400,000. So that is telling me that if you're trying to buy around $400,000, you're going to have to be looking in the $378 to $385 range. Now, if I want to look, let's say, at the $380s, here's one in Goodyear, listed at $365, sold for $380. Another one in Goodyear, listed $370, sold for $380. And another random one in Goodyear, listed for $399, sold for $380. So we have one that's sold under list price. So this is telling me that there's still that $10,000 to $20,000 number that people have to overbid to get these houses. So essentially, doesn't still show an indication that we're going back to that normalcy, which to me, being normal was that you could offer list price or maybe just a little bit more if those things are super nice. It's still showing that has a hyperactivity of overbidding on houses. And for my East Valley baddies, I guess I just adopted the Arizona baddies thing, huh? Oh well. We're gonna bump it up to 450 because you guys, like things a little more wealthy up there in that side of town. So I don't blame you. We're gonna look at 450. Once again, we're gonna do the same number. We're gonna go above and see how higher than 450 does it go. And then we're going to look at the, as we go down to see how much people are overbidding. Now, in my experience, West Valley was like, what, 25 to 30,000 more? I'm expecting this to be at least 50,000 more. Oh, okay, $100,000 more. This one was listed at 450. Well, actually, I bumped it up to 50. So yeah, so 450 it went to 500. So $50,000 more. This one was listed at 449, 482. So $40,000 more. Here's another one listed at 449 and it sold for 481. So about $30,000 to $50,000 more, which is definitely higher than the West Valley range. Now let's just pick one at 440 to see how much more under it was. This one was listed at 425, so for 440 cash. So it sold $15,000 more cash. Listed 429, so for 440, and listed 420, so for 440. So still that $20,000 to $30,000 range that you're gonna have to overbid to get this house. So if your uncle's telling you the market's cooling down because all this news about Zillow and now's the time to strike, you could tell your uncle to go back and go get him another beer and tell him to sit down because he needs to chill out for a bit. Market still doesn't show signs of it cooling off. Yes, is it cooling off compared to what, a year ago when things were selling $50,000 to $100,000 across the board cash? Yeah, no, of course it seems more cooler, but just because it's no longer a hell fire and now it is more a toasty fire, still means it's still a fire. It's still hot. One last thing that I'm going to look at to kind of show you guys the example of this is I want to see how many houses are still selling cash, because we still have these pesky investors here in the Valley that want to try to turn us into a rental society. Hashtag Illuminati. So for this, I go to a sold loan type, and I'm going to just kind of see a general numbers here. So out of the last 31 days, let's see how many houses have sold. 8,536 have sold. Out of 8,536, how many of them sold cash? 1,922 have sold cash with the percentage of it right next to it. Conventional is always our biggest one. 4,652, well over 50%, but the exact number is going to be next to me. And FHA, 679. So look at that difference between cash and FHA. There's more houses being sold cash in the Valley than there is FHA. And VA, of course, taking a very small percentage, 516. Actually, there are more houses selling to VA than FHA. Oh, almost. So that's still not an indication to me that things are going back to normal. I remember back in the day, FHA buyers were basically just as good as conventional buyers. It wasn't really that much of a difference. So as we're heading into the end of the year and starting the next year, I don't think we are showing signs of a cooling off period. The fire is still burning very hot, and maybe the fire will get slightly less hot, but you should not enter this market thinking you're going to be the Warren Buffett and get a bunch of deals. I had a few clients of mine that think they're like, oh yes, I'm going to find a deal and offer under list price and get something. Listen, if you're going to get something under list price, it's because it's overpriced. And are you really getting a deal on something that's overpriced? Like if I sell you this that's worth $100 on Amazon and I list it for $200, and then I'll reduce it, and then you find it, you're like, all right, I'm going to offer you 100,000 on it. Okay, great. I'll give it to you for 100,000. You're going to go tell your buddies, man, I got a great deal on this freaking thing. I'm buying it for $100, dude. Well, it's worth $100. You're not really getting a deal. You're just underbidding on something that's overpriced. So no cool off period yet. If something does change, I'll let y'all know. So if you want to start looking for houses now, you can go to ArizonaHomeGoals.com and start checking out properties. You'll get connected with me or somebody on my team. If you have any questions on any properties there, you can also schedule an appointment with me. All kinds of fun stuff and goodies for you to do. Let me know what other video you want to ask. Blah, 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 blah.